everyone. Thank you all so much for coming. Sorry to interrupt that amazing piece. We'll see more of them. My name's Beth Kerr. I'm the Theater and Dance Librarian here in the Fine Arts Library. Welcome to everyone. Thank you so much for coming. This is like the culmination of a couple of years' worth of excitement for me, and hopefully y'all will be excited about it too. A couple of years ago, Dr. Sharir asked me if he could donate the videotapes that he had from 30 plus years of producing dance in this town. And I was like, oh my God, yes, please. And then he really put the cherry on top by asking about digitizing it and having it out there for the world to see. And that really sent me up through the moon, let's say. So now here's what we've got, the Sharir and Sharir Bustamante Dance Collection. It's inside a digital repository the libraries administers called Texas ScholarWorks. So the URL's on the back of your program. Hopefully y'all will check it all out. A couple of things I wanted to just mention is there's an organization called the Dance Heritage Coalition, and they've gotten archives and dance video from all over the country, really, except they kind of missed the middle of the country, which is Texas and Oklahoma, Louisiana. So my goal in life is to get us in there as well. So that's what I'm after. Dance Heritage Coalition, yeah, we'll hear more about them in a minute. I really want to thank a lot of people. Mainly, I want to thank Dr. Sharir for even conceiving of us as being the place to put that stuff. It was all very neatly organized and tidy and beautiful, so we're almost already there, right? The second person I have to thank is Katie Van Winkle, who she's amazing. Katie was the research assistant, well, still is the research assistant for Dr. Sharir, and has done so much work on this archive. She looked at all the video with Dr. Sharir. They figured out, who is this person? And, let's write them down and get them acknowledged in the database. She's done amazing work, and she lugged all the videos over to PCL and over here, and I can't thank her nearly enough. The third person is Anna Lamphere and her team, Katie. She has another Katie that works for her, Katie Thornton, and between the two of them, they did all this digitizing and really worked so hard to get it in place. So thank you so much. What else do I have to say? We're going to have two panels today. The first one's going to talk about the process of preserving this material and why it's important. And we'll leave about 5 minutes at the end if you have questions for these people. We'll take a short break, and then we'll have a second panel that talks about Dr. Sharir's legacy, and hoping to hear from many, many people who worked with him over time. Another short time for questions, and then we'll have a reception at the other end of this room. Okay? Up to Tina. Thank you.
Welcome. Thank you so much for being here today. My name is Tina Curran, and I'm a professor in the Department of Theater and Dance and the director of the Dance Education Program. Dance literacy and dance legacy is my passion, so it is such an honor to be here today and to be part of the unveiling and launch of the Sharir and Sharir Bustamante Dance Collection. This is a first, and I'd really like to acknowledge Beth Kerr for her leadership and initiative in bringing an amazing team together, and to acknowledge Katie Van Winkle for being the linchpin in this process and right-hand lady to lead the charge in creating the database that you'll see today as part of Texas ScholarWorks. I'd like to begin just by having each of our panel members for this first panel, the Sharir and Sharir Bustamante Dance Collection, Dance Preservation, Digitization, and the Archive. And what we'll be looking at or thinking about in this panel is is some questions that we've been thinking about is how did this collection come to exist in sharing this story with you today? What does this collection include? What was involved in the curating? How is the archive accessed? What are considerations of documenting, archiving, and curating? And why is an archive for dance useful? And what are recommendations for young artists looking ahead? So I'd like to introduce you or have our panelists introduce themselves so that we can begin our discussion.
Hi, I'm Anna Lamphere. I'm head of digitization for the University of Texas Libraries, and I oversaw the day-to-day operations of digitizing the collection.
Hi, I'm Colleen Lyon. I'm the Scholarly Communications Librarian, which means I deal with a lot of different scholarly publishing issues. Specifically for this collection, I do the overall management for Texas ScholarWorks.
Hi, I'm Ashley Adair. I'm the digital archivist for UT Libraries. I work on ingest for born digital material and make interventions for good long-term preservation of digital assets.
Hi, I'm Christy Benwinkle. I'm a PhD candidate in performance and performing practice, which is a program in theater and dance. I have been Dr. Sherier's research assistant archivist for the past 3 years. And this is really thrilling. We've been working on this for ages, and of course, Jakob has been working on this for all of his
A
life.
lifetime. I think we might want to bring our microphones closer just for. Great. Who's doing the sound? Can you hear us? Oh, can you hear us okay? Okay, good, just checking. So just to give you a little bit of background, I'll share with you some of the introduction that presents the collection. The Sherir and Sherir Bustamante Dance Collection spans 4 decades of Dr. Sherir's career and includes filmed performances, rehearsals. Oh, we have a machine back here doing something very busy. The collection includes filmed performances, rehearsals, workshops, and events, along with photographs, programs, reviews, and print materials. The collection spans from 1977 to the present. This begins with Dr. Sherir's 1977 founding of the American Deaf Dance Company, followed by the tenure of the Sherir Dance Company, UT's professional company in residence, which Jakob founded in 1982. In 1988, the company took the name of the Sherir and Bustamante Dance Works, acknowledging Jose Luis Bustamante as co-artistic director. The collection features the choreography of Sherir and Bustamante through the 2007 final season. And additionally, this collection features nationally recognized dance artists and collaborators who were commissioned to present their work in Austin and to extend the reach of professional dance to our own community. Sherir has pioneered digital intervention for the purpose of augmenting all aspects of performance, while Bustamante explored new site-specific interests. They both continue producing, presenting, promoting, and educating the public about new dance, art, and music. So we have the gift of this collection being launched today. But how did it begin? I would like to have Anna give us a little bit of information about the beginning of the project and a proposal to get it started.
So Beth was really the one who brought the project forward as the subject specialist with Dr. Sherir. And initially, the project began as a pilot to see how we would go about digitizing and providing access to the collection. My role, of course, being digitizing. So the initial pilot project involved 150 videos in various formats. Formats included VHS, U-matic, Betacam, Hi8, Mini DV, DVD, and there were some already born digital files that came to us on thumb drives. So I would say the bulk of the materials, however, were VHS tapes, and then quite a lot Mini DV as well. So we got started with the first 150 sort of figuring out the technical aspects, but we couldn't have started to do anything if Katie hadn't meticulously, with Dr. Shearer, gone through and created a spreadsheet. Can you pull the spreadsheet up, Katie?
I will. Thank you.
So Katie, I don't even know how many hours of work put into the tracking spreadsheet. But as you can see, it's just a massive, this is one of, I think, 32 pages of information that Katie compiled. So the first, I don't know, 50 fields, Katie contributed. The last 4, we in digitization contributed, including information about file names, dates, who was responsible for receiving and digitizing, things like that. But yeah, just a massive undertaking for that preliminary step of creating the spreadsheet, which is crucial to any digitization project or any archiving project, anything. You want to make sure that you first know what you have so that you can then devise a plan for moving things through the pipeline.
Great, great. There was a picture that you popped up right before that. Anna, can you talk about that?
Sure. So again, Katie and Dr. Shearer, just the perfect people to work with. Oh, okay. So these are the workstations. I think we had at least 2 moves over the course of this project. We started in 2014. We still have, I think, maybe 2 or 3 left to digitize of the analog materials, of the analog video. But this is where most of the magic happened. Sitting at that workstation would have been Katie Thornton for the most part, who I'm not sure if she's here. But you have to, when you digitize analog video, you do it in real time. So each hour of dance was played on these machines, and then transcoding it to an accessible format also takes about real time. And then we also provided Dr. Shearer with access DVDs, which all took time too. So of the hundreds of hours of video that we created, you have to sort of multiply that by 3 to understand how much time it took to get everything done.
So when you think about 4 decades of creative process and product, and that being captured on different formats of video and of film, and as that technology goes out of use, what happens to the machinery? So you've been collecting these machines?
Yes. So not only are the formats obsolete at this point, I mean, no one's making VHS tapes anymore, no one's recording on U-matic anymore, really mini DV is obsolete at this point too, but the machinery itself is obsolete as well. So to acquire the playback machines is a challenge. It's hard to find them, and when you do find them, it's hard to find people who can service them. It takes a certain amount of expertise to just be able to use the equipment, and that's just for the playback. Then you add in the digitization steps and the expertise that requires, and it was definitely a learning curve for us because this is a large project. I mean, we work every day on a couple videos, that come in, sort of trickle in, but this was really, ongoing, sort of every day. We learned a lot, and we made some mistakes, and we learned from those.
And I'm going to ask Katie, because I think you first began with a batch of 150, and then that extended. So starting out, and I've seen you working with Yakov consistently every week for the last number of years. How did you begin, knowing that Yakov has this beautiful collection in his office?
So in 2013, 3 years ago, Yakov hired me as his assistant to shepherd this project through from beginning to end. And the first step was figuring out what was there. What is it that he is giving to the libraries? And so we conducted an inventory and discovered that looking at videos alone, so we're not talking about photographs or press clippings or anything like that, videos alone, 671 individual video objects. So 671 VHS tapes, U-matics, files on a thumb drive, and so forth. You have to be able to keep track of all of that. You have to know when you move the physical object to another space that you're not going to just lose it in these stacks and stacks of videos, which were taking up valuable real estate in Yakov's office anyway, and he wanted them out of there. So that's when I started making that spreadsheet and attempting to impose chronology on these videos that were stacked, sometimes in an order, sometimes not. Now you think about decades, it's not one person making videotapes of all of Yakov's work. It's maybe 100 different people created these videos, and they all had a different cataloging system. And some of them, I love them, these people from the 70s and 80s who wrote the date, the choreographers' names, the dancers' names, the dance titles, the venue, all kinds of notes about what is contained on this mysterious object in a box. And then some people didn't write anything, and we just had an object in a box, and we thought maybe there's a dance here. So in creating the spreadsheet, I took all the information that was available and put that in, and then had to start making a lot of guesses. And at that point, we were doing the pilot program, so we knew that we would digitize 150 videos. Eventually, that grew to 398, I think, is where we are now. But when you know that you're going down from 671 to 150, you have to make choices at that level. What are we going to digitize? That doesn't mean what is going to end up in the Texas Scholar Works collection, because we haven't even watched them yet. It just means which are the ones we're going to take the chance on. And so we used, Dr. Sharir would sort of weigh in on the significance of what we think this object in a box is a more significant dance than this other object in a box. We don't know because we can't watch them in the office. We just have to guess based on the clues. So there's a lot of kind of detective work. So significance, whether it seems to be a duplicate of something we've already looked at, and then also prioritizing by age, because as these objects age, they degrade. And we learned from Anna which were the ones to be more worried about at this point. My favorite mysterious object in a box had a label that just said, "This is the one you've been waiting for. Uncut, unruly, unholy." So we digitized that one.
Now, I had the pleasure of talking with Katie earlier, and she talked about an evolution that took place with this project of first diving in with no knowledge of these precious objects in boxes, but then receiving a crate from Jose. And it related to this database and spreadsheet. Did you have a template for that database when you began?
No, I just made it in Excel. I did not have a template. I did go and look at other collections of artists' work that are available to start thinking about what kind of information should be captured, will be useful to dancers and scholars and the general public of the future. And since I'm a scholar myself, I sort of used myself as the future user and thought, well, I'd really love to know not just the year this took place, but what venue it took place in. I do want to know, of course, the performers' names, but if I could know the costume designers' names, that would be even better. So I tended toward a sort of completist approach. And of course, Yakov was great at this. We would, once they'd gone through the digitization process and were loaded onto the server, and we could sit in his office and watch every dance. I mean, just incredible memories of this came pouring out of him. What was an even more precise kind of assist was this crate that Jose Luis Bustamante sent to us. He sent 3 huge plastic crates full of his records of the dance company, which were, by year, all of the programs, all of the season announcements, all of the press clippings. Gosh, what a relief. Suddenly, we have a production history, and we know when these things took place and who was involved. So that was a great gift. Jose is in Mexico right now and couldn't be here, but this is very much his collection as well.
So the videos, these precious objects in a box, may not have had information about the creative collaborators or about the dancers. And as a dancer, wouldn't you like to be acknowledged in a performance that you've done? So these programs coming from Jose provided the opportunity to bring all of that information in one easy document right there.
Yes.
So I think what will be nice as you look in the database, in the archive, is being able to see who was involved and the connections. And how does this information now get organized and presented and accessed to the world? I'm going to have Colleen talk to you about Texas ScholarWorks.
So Texas ScholarWorks is an online repository that the library started up in 2008 with the goal of taking the research and scholarship that's being done here at the university and trying to make it more widely available to everybody in the world. And the Sharir and Sharir Bustamante Dance Collection is the perfect example of the type of content that we want to make available. It's content that probably otherwise people wouldn't have access to. And so we had to work with Anna and Katie and Yakov to try to figure out how do we make this collection fit into the architecture that exists within Texas ScholarWorks that we can't change. And so that was an interesting conversation to try to figure out how we were going to represent the choreographers and the costume designers and the lighting design and all of these different things into a format that, quite frankly, was designed for text-based resources. And so making some of those decisions involved a lot of different conversations about, well, if we put it here, what's that going to mean for search, and going back and forth on those kinds of things.
You had talked about some primary categories and secondary categories and ways to embed information.
Right. So I don't know if you want to open up an object so we can see. So this is kind of the landing page for an individual item in Texas ScholarWorks, and I like to call this the short record. It's kind of the highlights. And one of the conversations that we had was, depending on how we categorize this information, it may or may not show up on this short record. So in the description field, you can see we've got choreographer, media design, lighting design. All of those pieces of metadata, those descriptive pieces of information, also exist in other metadata fields, but we wanted to make sure that they showed up in description because description shows up on the short record and the other fields don't. For the other fields, you have to click on Show Full Item Record, and then you can see everything that's there. But if you're a new user and you're just kind of stumbling onto this, you might not notice that little link that says Show Full Record. And so we wanted to make sure that the most important information was readily available to people, and that as people got used to looking around in this collection, it would probably become obvious that there was a button that let them get more information, but it's probably not going to be immediately obvious to that first-time user.
Can you wiggle your mouse where Show Full Record is? Down there on the left. That's useful to know.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. And how did all of this information come to be in this architecture? Katie, can you talk about that?
I copy and pasted from one spreadsheet into a form field. You can, if you're accessioning a bunch of different files into Texas ScholarWorks, you can do that all at once. You can do a batch, like a batch upload, and send a spreadsheet that has all the fields with the correct names of the fields. And we did that early on, and then I got really persnickety about wanting it to show up exactly how I wanted to show up, so I ended up doing it a little more by hand. And so if this is something you're interested in for your own work, if you're going piece by piece, it's very, very, very simple. It's only when you get to trying to put hundreds of things in there that you want to hire an assistant. But you can do this for yourself.
So this could perhaps be a format that one person might even think about keeping track of information of their own creative work by using these categories. Could be useful. Now, Colleen, I know that there's a lot of different works up here that include lots of different artists. How is artistic ownership and intellectual property and copyright dealt with in this kind of a situation?
So that's a really good question. We thought about that a lot at the beginning of the project, and we worked with a resident copyright expert, Georgia Harper, who has since retired, to kind of get her input on what are the things we need to consider as we look at this collection. And basically, Yakov was fully aware of what we were trying to do, make this work available online. And as a co-creator on almost everything in there, if not everything, his okay was enough for us to move forward with this project. The way that a lot of different copyright works with things where there's a lot of people working on the same project is they tend to be considered joint authors, and in that case, everybody has equal ownership and can do with it what they want. And so the permission from the one author was enough for us to move forward with the rest of it. That being said, we wanted to make sure that we were sensitive to anybody who had contributed to these things who maybe felt uncomfortable with the work being online. And so we added a statement on the main collection landing page that basically says, you know, this was uploaded with permission of Dr. Sharir. We're not making any warrants about whether or not this information is in the public domain, and I would say probably in almost 100% of the cases it's not. But we are doing this with permission and also relying upon fair use. And if you have any concerns or if you have any information that you would like to share with us, please feel free to get in contact with us. And so we feel confident that if anybody did have concerns or questions, that we would be able to address those as they came up. I can say that so far nobody has had anything but positive things to say about having this online.
Great. When you think about what dance works that you can find, up until maybe 5-10 years ago, now things are more readily found on YouTube and on the internet. But prior to that, it was really about what you could purchase and perhaps what you could pirate by what you had seen, been able to videotape off of the television set, and how you could gather your own private collection of materials, especially for professors and educators trying to pass on our legacy of creative works. So I would imagine that as dancers and as creators, that state being a matter of the cost of commercialized video and the access to that having works accessible in an archive that's available for educational use, for research use, there's availability to the scope and evolution of an artistic lexicon that otherwise would be available only if you had arm's reach to that file drawer or to that box in a person's closet.
Yeah.
So this is huge to have this collection available. And with the work that you've been doing, Katie, in discovering what's in the Schreer Bustamante collection, can you talk a little bit about things you've discovered that might be interesting to students or to researchers in coming into a collection that not only chronicles an artistic arc of Yakov's career, but also that arc within a social cultural context?
Absolutely. So in his career, Yakov has collaborated with huge names, huge imaginations, and his own work is similarly of this magnificent scale. I think that some of the things that I would pull out, for instance, if I were teaching this collection, I would make sure that the students knew about his founding of the American Deaf Dance Company and his continuing work throughout his career with a focus on inclusivity and people of different backgrounds coming together to create art with their bodies. So that the American Deaf Dance Company was a pioneering moment in American dance history. Similarly, his collaborations with people like Merce Cunningham, Deborah Hay, Tina Marsh, we have Rena Schenfeld up there, David Dorfman, Bill T. Jones, the list just goes on and on. This collection is evidence of a performance network where you can see how choreographers work together and influence each other and spread their ideas and techniques through working in the same room, but also through dancers who travel from company to company, bringing the repertory to some extent with them. Let's see. And then, of course, what Yakov may be best remembered for in some circles is his innovations with technology. There are dances in here where he is strapped up in this crazy wearable tech like EEG, EKG, like stuff out of Grey's Anatomy, and then there's lights everywhere, and you can see his heart beating, and he's dancing inside his own circulatory system. That sound like I just made it up, but I didn't. You can find it in this collection. Yeah, those are exciting things. Go check them out.
Now, I know you've been cataloging video. Have you been able to add programs and reviews?
That's our next phase. We have, so far, 3 photographs that have been scanned. There are many, many more. Just boxes and boxes. So that's phase 2, 2017.
And ultimately, when the whole collection is digitized and made accessible, will you be able to find a piece and then look for the video and the photographs and the reviews? And will there be a way to link materials?
Yeah, I'm working on what would basically be a production history website using a format called LibGuides, where you'd be able to sort of either browse or search for a particular year, a particular dance, a choreographer, or just read through what's happening every year and then see what are the collection, what's the collection of items that are connected to this query, and you'd be able to travel between them. Of course, these things still exist as physical objects too, and they're being collected here by the Fine Arts Library. So there's also a physical collection that's kind of the backstage story of the digital collection.
Great, great. I'm actually going to have Anna talk to us a little bit about what happens to the videos. When you receive the videos from Yakov's office, what did you do with them and where do they go now?
So one important thing to point out about Texas ScholarWorks is that this is the access portal to a file type that's easily streamed, say on, it's an access portal. But we also made higher resolution files for every recording that we store to dark storage, I guess you could call it. It's archival LTO tape. And those files aren't out there streaming on the internet, but if Dr. Schreer or his agents or someone involved in the dances needs them, we can always get those back. As for the originals, the masters, I'm not sure what the long-term plan is for those materials, but we are housing them here. I believe that Beth Kerr is working on a plan for organizing them, and that'll, I think, probably depend a lot on the paper records once we get those in and have a more holistic understanding of the collection as a whole and what type of access we want to provide to the physical materials, because like Katie said, that there's contextual information on the physical items themselves that researchers might be interested in. Obviously, the dances themselves are important, but the physical materials for someone interested in archiving dance and collecting dance would be really valuable as well.
Great, great. And it was interesting for me to find out that the vault storage, the dark storage, cold storage, is backed up every 5 years, or upgraded, migrated, because technology keeps changing. There's migration for storage. So it's amazing the amount of care and thought that the university puts into keeping these collections over time. So I want to bring Ashley into this conversation and shift the conversation a little bit to, as an artist, as a practicing creating artist, what are things that I might think about in keeping track of and documenting and storing my work and the process of my work over time for a later archive?
Yeah, sure. So an archive is as good as the pieces that make it up. So I would want to start with your handling of each of the media artifacts that you're working with. And for many of you, especially people starting your careers, it's going to be in a digital format rather than a magnetic or optical media. So there's a lot that you can do there, but it also introduces a lot of fragility that we don't see as much in performance that's captured in a more physical medium. So you'll want to be capturing, just some basic kind of tips are that you would want to be capturing at as high of a quality as you can, because then you'll have more options down the line for how you might transform those files for various preservation or access sort of opportunities. You would want to make sure that any file formats that you're using are ubiquitous, are widely used by people around the world, and aren't just some strange extension or proprietary format that your camera introduces, or your scanner if you're scanning photographs. The reason that you would do that is because then they're interoperable with systems that you will encounter or archivists will encounter down the line, and we won't face as many challenges getting at the good content that you've captured because it's locked in a strange arrangement of zeros and ones that no computer programs can read anymore. You'll want to be really organized from the beginning. Katie's all of her insights were really right on about how she went about looking at the information that brings value to the actual media artifacts in the collection. Decontextualized, just playing a video on a screen, it may be very beautiful, and we may get artistic value from that, but it's the information that surrounds it, what we call the metadata, all of this, who is that, who was the costume designer, where was this, all of that contextual information is what brings really the whole, the real value down the line. And so now that we can create all of these recordings and captures and things in digital format, it's just proliferating. I'm sure we all on our laptop at home have zillions and zillions of, or on our camera or on our phone, whatever, all these pictures we've taken over time that are not organized really in any way, shape, or form other than what your operating system or application is adding in, such as, if you have the camera date and time configured properly on your camera, that will get embedded in the file and can be extracted by systems later. But date or geolocation tags are probably all you're going to get. So have a good organizational system to deal with this bulk on the front end so that you have some sense of what you're looking at down the road, because the scale is just going to be so different than even hundreds of VHS. It doesn't compare to tens of thousands of digital files. So maybe have like a naming convention that you go through. There are tools. You don't have to rename every single file in your folder. There are free tools you can find on the internet called bulk renamers, where you can go through and apply a convention. You might want to put some meaning into it, like maybe the performance name and the date. That could be like a very basic, just in the file name. Then you have some amount of contextual information that will accompany your files on down the road. And I guess the other last thing I would say is be careful of your storage media. As Tina was pointing out, and Anna as well, any of these physical pieces of equipment that we use to make and store digital files, they go out of style over time, or they just physically break down. So for instance, if you have a whole bunch of external hard drives going around, a little known fact is that you should fire those up maybe once or twice a year. There's a little spinning, all of your information is recorded on a little silver disc in there, and it literally spins. And so if you don't plug it in, it kind of like gums up over time, and it can't spin, and you can't read the information off of it anymore. Solid state little flash drives, same thing with a video or any other external media. Don't leave them in a hot car. Don't leave them in your garage. In general, all of your storage media, you're going to want to keep an eye on it, know what you have, and be upgrading it as times change or as the life cycle that you might expect from the manufacturer. It'll be listed somewhere in the paper that you get with it. Runs out. But in general, if it's in a climate, temperature and humidity that you are comfortable in climate control, it'll probably be fine. It won't be fine in your garage or your attic. You won't be able to read it later. So that's a physical consideration.
Katie, what have you found helpful also in receiving and moving through materials? What kinds of tips were useful in that process that might be good advice for others?
One thing that was very helpful was that Yakov's office is on the second floor of Winship, so it did not get flooded when Waller Creek flooded a couple of years ago. Unlike the basement of Winship, there were great losses among costume and other design people. So in terms of physical storage, be smart about where you keep your precious things. What was really great was when there'd be a tape and the program was taped to the tape. Somebody had just grabbed an extra program, and in addition to a label being put on the tape with date and title and kind of that basic information, they just kept a little package of, this is the documentation that we had from this event, and it'll just all be together. So if you do end up with not everything on your hard drive, that would help. definitely.
Can I give one tip about the backup? Right, so that was a great point about if your media gets flooded, it's done for, no matter what it's recorded on. So a good rule to remember is it's called 3-2-1. If you really value your digital files and you anticipate wanting to have them throughout your career, make 3 copies of them, have them on 2 different kinds of storage media, and have one of them in a different location from the others. So one in your office, one at home. Then if your office floods, you've got your one at home. If your house catches on fire, God forbid, then you have your one in your office. And so what I'm saying by 2 different forms of storage media isn't so complex. It's like you have the copy on your laptop, and then you have some external hard drives. That's 2 different sorts. That way, if this sort of drive ends up, people find out in 5 years it was bad manufacturing, they're all dying at the same time, which happens, you still have these ones on your laptop. And optical media doesn't last very long. This thing about like CDs last forever, no, they actually fail quite rapidly. DVDs as well.
So I'm kind of getting the sense we want to migrate what we really love and care about to more contemporary media, if those are things that we want to keep in time. I'm opening this question to all of you. In a collection of work, we might videotape rehearsals, we might videotape dress rehearsals, we might videotape creative process, as well as documenting a premiere of a performance or a restaging of a performance. Can all of those things be part of an archive? Do we want all of those things part of an archive? As a librarian, do you want to receive all of those materials?
Would leave that up to the curator, the subject specialist, to make those determinations. But generally speaking, an archives is a body of work, and you would want all of those contextualizations of the work that someone was doing over a lifetime. So I would say yes. And in fact, in the repository, we have all of those. We have performances, we have rehearsals, we have dress rehearsals. The whole spectrum is there. But something that Katie said a minute ago stuck out to me, where she was talking about when you tape the program on, and she called it a package. I think that's really key. If you can think about your materials in packages, that's sort of on the digital side what we try to do too. Like once something's digitized, keep those things together. So yeah, think about your information packages over the life cycle as you're working. But yeah, I think it's great to keep all of it. I'm not sure that any archives will be able to take all of your stuff, but in Dr. Sharir's case, we're thrilled to have as much as we can.
Absolutely, absolutely. Something you might want to think about, though, if you are offered the opportunity to share your work, maybe what would be a top percentage that you would want to have made accessible. In working with Dr. Sharir, has everything that you've pulled off the shelf become part of what will be accessible to the public?
No. Things sort of fell off that cliff at varying rates depending on a number of factors. Something that we chose to be digitized. I spoke about the criteria we used to determine which of these objects we would send first or send at all. Some things would not end up in the collection kind of at the level of where Anna was working, if when put through those machines, there was something wrong with it. Either the image never came through, or there was no audio, or it turned out that this label says this was a Sharir Dance Company piece, but in fact it was like a public access TV show from 1992. And it just got mislabeled, and it has nothing to do with this collection. So some things didn't survive the process. Some things weren't what they said they were. And then quite a number of other things we chose not to, or Dr. Sharir chose not to include because we already had a representation of that dance that he felt was of much higher quality, either in terms of video or in terms of sort of lighting and performance that was visible or audible, and he would prefer that be the version that greets the public. That said, though, we were interested in, if there was an event that went for 2 or 3 nights, we often would include both the Friday and the Saturday performance. Sometimes different dancers perform in different performances, and more than that, as we all know, live performance is never set. It changes to some extent every night. And this kind of digitization promotes a fiction that we can really capture dance and have it and own it somewhere. That's a fiction, but we wanted to have a collection level acknowledgement that this is a representation of a live performance and not a live performance itself.
And I'll just note that even if something didn't make it onto Texas ScholarWorks, we still saved the original. So if anything that was digitized, we still have it. So, I mean, this is sort of the selection process. They decided what was going to come to us. That was the first phase of selection. It was digitized, and then it was determined what would be available to the public.
Is this the sole cataloging system for the work, or will there be an additional catalog of materials that come in?
Not so much cataloging as much as we didn't have the benefit of having Ashley, our digital archivist, here when we started this process, but she's here now. So when we move on to the paper records, we won't catalog the materials necessarily, but we will do a much better job of making sure that those digital packages that we create are really well documented for the digital posterity of them. Those types of records won't show up in Texas ScholarWorks, but they'll be there living forever with the digital artifacts. So it'll be much better and fuller records of what's in those digital packets.
Great, great. I'm really interested in, Katie, you had talked about that the Schreer and Schreer Bustamante company provide a cornerstone for dance history and dance legacy and the creative work in professional dance in this area, particularly in Austin. And I appreciate Beth's vision for Austin to be a satellite center for the Dance Heritage Coalition to document and to create access for our artists. Also a dream of mine, I think, to have dance in our area to be featured. I know that the Dallas Public Library has important dance repositories and archives there. I know that there are many artists in our community who have boxes in their closets and basements of important materials that would be fabulous to have connection to, and having the Schreer and Schreer Bustamante collection creates a cornerstone that already is recognizing many of those artists as dancers as well as collaborators, work that have been commissioned. I open this question to all of you. How do you see that this kind of a dance collection can grow as a result of connection or reference to the Schreer Bustamante collection?
Well, so speaking of Texas ScholarWorks, Colleen might have a better definition of what's appropriate to go into Texas ScholarWorks, as we say, and it really has to do with research that is created as part of a faculty or students here at the University of Texas. So things that are related to UT or are relevant to UT are
Eligible.
Yeah, exactly.
I would say even the stuff that isn't related to UT, everything in this dance collection has its own persistent URL. And we're going to work really, really hard to make sure that URL always works so that, 10, 15 years from now, if somebody, another dancer in Austin creates their own online collection and wants to connect it to, Dr. Schreer was a real influence for me and I want to connect to this other dance collection, it's going to be very easy to point back to this collection, and that dancer won't have to worry about these links not working. So I will say that there is a, robustness isn't quite the right word, but we want this to be a collection that other people access, use, can point to in a reliable way, because I know that broken links are a frustration for all of us, and we don't want that to happen with these. And so we've put things in place to make sure that that doesn't happen. So I think that there's a way to kind of create that community, even if it's not all physically here in Texas ScholarWorks.
Great, great.
I will also say that even before this has been announced kind of to the public, we have had over 12,000 downloads and visits to this collection. So it's already getting found and it's getting used, and I can only imagine now that we're kind of announcing it to the world that that's going to just increase, probably exponentially.
Katie, what have you noticed in the hits that have been coming in?
They're from all over the world. We have limited information at this level, but you can go down, you can scroll down to the bottom of the collection in Texas ScholarWorks, click on Show Usage Information, and it'll show you some little charts after it spins for a while. So this is about downloads. The Leaf Storm from 2000 is the most popular download right now. This shows when these downloads are happening, and while the United States is by far the largest consumer of the Sharir collection, Pakistan has downloaded 18 files over the last 6 months.
Sort of want to find out and meet who.
I know. Who is
who
this?
people
Who are these people? I hope they'll email me someday.
Have you been getting any comments or feedback on the website from interested
No.
researchers? Not yet.
Not yet.
Okay. I just wanted to point out that the Dance Heritage Coalition has free for download. These are the published materials, but they're all available in a PDF format that you can download in print. Securing Our Dance Heritage, Documenting Dance, a Practical Guide, Dance Videotapes at Risk, Strengthening Living Archives, a plan for empowering artists and committees. So there's a number of publications here that if for your company or for your practice you're interested in thinking about a living archive, these are resources that are available to you. I would love to open the floor because I'm sure there are some questions and curiosities that you'd might like to share and ask our panel.
Any questions? Oh, you're just
waiting here.
Anybody want to start their own archive now?
Too late.
I heard you mention the idea of packaging or associating materials, and while we may not fully understand what all of the about to be digitized materials entail, so there are photographs maybe and some print documents, I'm wondering if they pertain to some of the video materials and how they will be associated with the videos in the collection.
So we talked about this being a phased project, and the first phase was the pilot digitization, and then we moved on to the rest of the video content. But we always knew in the back of our minds that there were these paper materials that might be coming to us eventually. Whether or not we'd be able to fold them in was up for debate until recently when we found out that we would be able to move on to phase 2. So when we were talking with Colleen about how things would be ingested into Texas ScholarWorks, we had that in mind, how the paper records would relate. And in all honesty, it's been so long, I don't remember what we decided, but I know that we thought about how, and Katie and I, I'm sure we'll have lots of conversations about how we'll make that happen, but there was definitely thought. We wanted to make sure that in Texas ScholarWorks, we would be able to associate a dance performance with its program, with the photographs that came with it, so that they would all be associated in some way together.
And that can happen.
Oh, that's great.
So you talked about wanting to recognize or open to the dance community in Austin. But when you talk about the Texas Scholar, it's really only going to remain with the university? Or do you collect and are interested in local choreographers and dancers and performance and different ways that weaves in our community, you know? So I have a question for that in terms of archiving the history of this community. I mean, Yakov, Jose, and many of the other companies that were part of my development as a choreographer and a dancer and a sight work choreographer in Austin. And it's a tremendous history. So I'm just curious about that empty void.
Great.
Because it hasn't really been recognized. We have UT, which is wonderful, and we have the Austin community, but those have crossed over a lot because I've worked with a lot of those dancers, including Jose, for a long time. So I'm just curious.
I was wondering if Beth could come in on this.
Yeah, thank you so much for asking that question, because that's the other half of my goal in life is to do just that. And you know, I'm not sure about Texas ScholarWorks specifically. I consider it my research, and that would be something that I really would like to finish off my career by doing is collecting the amazing dance that's happened in this town. Dance Heritage Coalition does a thing. They set up digitization hubs. They've only set up 2 or 3 maybe so far. They're based in Washington. I don't know, they have one in New York. And one thing I'm trying to push for is to see if we can set up one here at UT. So that's maybe coming. You know, I have a lot of background work to do to get that to happen, but yes, that's my dream in life. So,
If you're interested, that would be great.
yes,
The
If you-
dance artists here who are interested.
all of you.
Yeah.
I would also add that while Texas ScholarWorks is intended for people who are connected to UT, I mean, I don't want to speak for anybody else, but we're always happy to have conversations with people in the community to see if there are ways that we can make it work. You know, we have to be aware of limited resources, but absolutely, if anybody is interested, you know, I'm certainly open to having a conversation to see if it's possible.
And under general conditions, things that are uploaded into Texas ScholarWorks are digital already. Like the role that I played as far as digitizing these analog formats isn't the norm as far as things that are uploaded into Texas ScholarWorks. So that's why we were involved. The libraries.
Any more questions? Here's one in the back.
I apologize, I joined a little late. I'm not sure if this was covered. But I was interested in knowing if dance criticism would be archived in some way, the reviews. And the other one is by doing this that I want to ask is, I was just curious, by doing archives, are we also archiving repertoire of dance, which is repertoire which becomes so important for dance, of how a certain repertoire has traveled. So are we also creating what dance repertoire is by these archives? It's just curious to know.
I didn't get the second part of the question, asking about the repertoire?
Yes, by archiving videos and stuff, are we also considering that as a repertoire of the elements of dance that have traveled over time?
Okay, I think I'll let Katie answer this with the reviews and the repertoire. I think, if I'm understanding your question, that the dance is being archived, is it showing the arc of the repertoire?
I would say yes, that in the process of curating a collection and making it available to the public, the curator is acting a little bit in loco choreographer, choosing which phrases, which executions of phrases will be passed on to another generation, as you know, an assistant might put on Balanchine's dances onto a new generation of dancers. And especially with this kind of archiving, which is so publicly available, suddenly, you know, 3D embodied, which we're seeing up here, and maybe some of us saw a couple years ago over in Winship, has become more of a permanent kind of dance object than something that did not get this treatment, was not archived. So there's certainly a power that we are sort of applying to Dr. Sharir's work here, and it's one that we don't really know what the impact will be. As for dance criticism, I think that's a great idea. In a lot of the files that we'll be working on with the paper records, press clippings, reviews, criticism is included, and that's a really important piece of the context of all of these dances.
I would also add, though, we'll have to be careful of copyright with those.
Yeah, that might be less about like, oh, Texas Scholar Works provides that dance criticism, and more about pointing readers, pointing users towards the archives of those newspapers and magazines and so forth, because they may actually already be archived in another place already.
I think there was a question here.
Yeah.
In reference to Silas' question, you had mentioned that you have a plan for empowering artists, and a plan for empowering artists that you had mentioned that you could download.
Oh, these documents?
Yes, the documents.
Yes, from the Dance Heritage Coalition.
Oh, that's from the Dance Heritage Coalition.
Yeah.
And so, I'm curious about both the Dance Heritage and the Scholar Works. If you have an intent to do what Sally is saying, to encourage and give processes and workshops or help in some way, or just inspiration for the importance of the digitizing of the imagery, of preserving the imagery. A lot of people want to do it, and they know how important their work is, but it's just passing.
So I think a workshop would be interesting,
No,
would be useful.
I'm not suggesting any specific thing. I'm wondering about the intent here. So you're doing great work with what you're doing. Is proliferating that, giving the community not just access to it, but a way to do it themselves, or
to continue to build the collection,
yeah,
additional
to
collections. Yeah.
Is that clear?
Yes, I think,
Okay.
yeah.
Yes, along with trying to gather local dance video, I want to try to see if we can get Dance Heritage Coalition to come and do workshops for the community. So maybe it doesn't wind up at UT or in Texas Scholar Works, but they have a better idea of how to archive their own material. That's one more goal of mine. Yes.
Great. Another question.
Here we go.
So Katie, this is for you, and I meant to ask you about this earlier, but what was on the uncut, unruly, unholy tape?
It was very unruly. It was Andrea Beckham in a piece called Zero Gravity. So it was some raw material where she was like swooping and flying against a green screen. That has actually, Andrea, when she sort of looked over our shoulder in Jaco's office, saw herself dancing and asked for a copy of it so that she could perhaps choreograph something new where her past self dances with her present self. So very exciting, that unholy combination in the 21st century too.
Inspiration for new work.
Yeah, that sounds great. Any more questions? We have about 4 more minutes for questions. If not, we can take a break. No more? Okay.
I'd like to thank our panel, Anna
Yes,
and Colleen
thank
and
y'all very
Ashley
much.
and Katie.
Okay, we'll take a 15-minute break. At 2:30, we'll come back for a panel about the legacy of Dr. Sharir. We have our folks coming in. We have a new addition. We'll get introduced. And Ellen, go ahead and have a seat, everyone. We want to get started on panel number 2. Hopefully you all have programs. This panel is about Dr. Schreer's legacy, co-moderated by Rebecca Rosen and Katie Van Winkle, who we've heard from. But we'll hear lots more. Everybody
Andy
ready?
Scott, please come to the front.
Yes.
Andy, you did make it.
Miracles happen.
We should do another photo. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Oh my God. I'm sorry. Hi.
We had a surprise. We have a surprise visitor.
Okay, Rebecca, take it.
So,
Just a minute.
Perfectement.
Welcome back. You can hear me, right? Yeah. Welcome back. Thank you so much for joining us for the second panel of this year's Bustamante Community Dance Collection Launch Celebration Symposium. Today, in the second panel, it's a reunion. A lot of people who are intimately connected with Dr. Schreer, and we want them to talk about his innovation and his legacy. So I'm first going to just ask our panelists to go down the line and introduce themselves. And please, when you introduce yourself, please let us know what your connection to Yakov and to his company or companies is/are. Thank you.
My name is Andy Scott, and I was a former faculty member here at UT. I was a member of the Schreer Company. Oh my God, for a long time. And I currently live in Florida, and I teach at the University of South Florida in Tampa. And I haven't seen a lot of people in a very long time, so I'm very happy to be here. Thank you.
I'm Carol Smith Adams, and I was executive director of Schreer Dance Company from 1985 to 1998.
I'm Sally Jacques, and I have, my connection really is with Yakov and Jose, watching Yakov's performances for many, many years and collaborating with Jose Bustamante for a number of years, and I'm the artistic director of Blue Lapis Light Aerial Dance Company.
I'm Kate Warren. I danced with the Schreer Dance Company from 1982 to 1991. I was co-artistic director during that time, too. And I am now the owner of Cafe Dance and artistic director of Circuitous Dance.
I'm Charles Santos. I was with the company in the dark ages. I think it was 83 to 92 or something. I'm the dance presenter in Dallas. I run a company called Titus Presents at the AT&T Performing Arts Center, so I'm the dance presenter for Dallas. I've been there for 15 years.
Hi, I'm Andrea Beckham, and I was also a dancer with Schreer Dance Company for many, many, many years, and then fortunate to be a guest choreographer, invited back and presented in a lot of the future work, and now I get to see Yakov every day because I'm a senior lecturer in the Department of Theater and Dance, and his office is next to mine, and he's there before I get there and usually after I leave. Every day.
Hi, my name is Rebecca Rosen, and I'm a professor in the Department of Theater and Dance and the division head of Performance Studies and Pedagogy in the department. And I'm also extremely honored to be Yakov's loving colleague. He's always been just such a wonderful source of support for me from the moment I arrived at UT, actually from the moment I interviewed at UT. And he told me that in order to get the job, I needed to make sure that I seduced everyone into loving me. And I hoped I could send out enough energy to get the job, and I guess I did. So the way we're going to structure this panel is that Katie, I want to make sure that we acknowledge Katie Van Winkle again, who has worked for the last 3 years as Yakov's assistant and the primary archivist on this project, and who's put in hundreds of hours laboring on this collection, which we're so excited about. The purpose of this panel is to reflect on innovation in Yakov's work and also his legacy, and in many ways to tell and share some of our fondest memories and stories about Yakov's work and our experience of it. And so Katie, we also wanted to showcase some of the work from the collection. So we're going to be starting by showing a few-minute clip of a different piece for each sort of segment of our conversation. And then Katie's going to mute the sound, but we're going to let the piece continue. And then I'm going to ask a question of all the panelists. And we'll do that over maybe 4 or 5 times. And at the end, we're going to have ample time because I know there are many people here in the audience who also have memories and reflections and thoughts to share. So you want to introduce the clip?
Yes, so we're going to start with a dance entitled Uomo nella Luna, which means man in the moon.
Uomo della luna. Mani. Luna rosa. Uomo orbe nera. Mano rosa nell'uomo. Orbe nell'uomo nero, luna nell'orbe rosa, uomo luna nera, mano orbe, nero. Orbe mano. Rosa orbe nell'una, nero uomo nell'orbe, uomo nella rosa, nera orbe, rosa, mano, luna rosa, uomo orbe nera, mano rosa, orbe nell'uomo nero, luna nell'orbe rosa. Nemo, orbe mano, nera luna uomo, rosa orbe nell'una, nero uomo nell'orbe, uomo nella rosa mano, nera orbe nell'uomo, rosa luna, mano.
So as we continue to let that play, we just wanted to start with the first question for our panelists, which is a really basic one, and that's to ask you if you would share a memory, a favorite memory, or some of working with Yakov in your capacity as dancers and performers, or some thoughts about working with him in other capacities or seeing the work from the outside. We would love to hear from you. So if you wanted to start maybe with Andy and go this way.
Well, I've worked with Yakov in the latter part of the company, so starting in 1999, dealing with technology, and I feel like I just have this really strong memory of being in the Brockett Theater working on this piece where we were using bungees and pulleys, and then he had this idea. We were always dealing with projection and how to integrate projection in an actual way into the work, rather than just having it exist kind of parallel. So he had this idea to film us all and our faces, and then to project those. But then when we got into the theater and realized that our faces were like, I don't know, 12 by 12, and we were dancing behind these things. It was a little shocking, but that was the thing that I appreciated the most all the time, was that every time we got into the studio, there was something new to try, and there was something new to experiment with, and I have this advice forever, which is just start, just begin, always just begin. So that's something very much that I have from you, Yakov.
Carol. Well, I don't even know where to begin, but I met Yakov in 1982 when I was working at the Paramount Theater, and I was doing a Deaf Arts Festival in conjunction with the Broadway production of Children of a Lesser God. And at the time, Yakov was director of the American Deaf Dance Company. And so the American Deaf Dance Company, I contracted them to perform in our Deaf Arts Festival. And Yakov and I had an instant connection. And a few years later, when I left the Paramount, he asked me to come work for the company. And my job had been in fundraising. And so it was kind of like headlong into this managing a company with virtually no staff. But if Yakov could have cloned himself, he could have done both jobs. He really could have, because he is an incredible business person. You know, and I know that isn't what he wanted to do, but he was such a good mentor for me, and I learned so much from him in learning how to manage the company. And one of the memories I think is very important to me and very important to this community is that Yakov wasn't just about presenting our dancers. He was about nurturing other artists in the community, whether they are other dancers or sculptors or composers, musicians, and on and on. And he also wanted to expand the opportunities for this community to see dance. And he did it in very innovative ways, such as sharing the stage with other dance companies, New York dance companies, commissioning those companies and getting works from them, and then sharing the stage with them. And it helped our dancers to grow, and it also let this community experience just a plethora of dance from all over the world. And I think we've been a little lacking since then, but I think that's one of his greatest contributions to Austin and to my life and my future career.
I think Yakov, I did not dance with Yakov, but I have worked and collaborated with many of the dancers that were in your company, and I have seen almost all of your work back, not recently. And as a developing and emerging artist in Austin, what I knew about Yakov and what was part of his big heart in terms of this community was he was available to people outside of the university. He put performances on in the Capital City Playhouse, so that we all could have the connection between what was happening here and what was happening and what we needed to have happen in our community. So it was very, very much a vehicle for expanding, and dancers that came out and developed work after that through you was expanding what was this developing dance arts community in Austin, and it woke it up, and we were at arts panel meetings together, all the ways that it spilled over and really opened up our community to dance. Thank you, Yakov, for that, really.
I think the biggest influence for me is Yakov really taught the dancers how to take pride in what it was that we did. And I was so used to being a dancer and also coming in and having to set up the space and do everything, clean up and all of that. And Yakov said, "Oh no, dancers don't do that. Dancers are artists." And I was like, "What?" And so Yakov would come early. We performed at a place, Capital City Playhouse. Oh my God, so trashy. And Yakov would go early with his mop, all of his cleaning supplies, his vacuum, and we would get there and the place would be spotless. And he would always say, "Your job is to dance and to be an artist. You don't clean. You don't clean up afterwards." And it was great. He did that everywhere we went. And I say the same thing to my own dancers or anyone that rents Cafe Dance to perform in. They always say, "Well, I'm going to help you with a strike." And I said, "Oh no, you're an artist. I do all that for you." I think that was the biggest thing. And the other thing is, we were just talking about the fire and the bravery of all the dancers. And Yakov really developed that in us. He always talked about engaging the fire in our bellies and to not apologize for what it was.
The fire.
For what fire? To not apologize for being artists. And the other story I have to tell is before I met Yakov, and he had the, I can't remember if it was at Spectrum Deaf Artists first. And I was dating a man who was an aide to a city council member, Richard Goodman. Remember him? The guy with the snake. So anyway, my
was
boyfriend.
Was a snake or had a snake?
He thought it was a snake,
Oh.
but it was really just a hose. So anyway, you know. So my boyfriend came home that night. This before we had a dance panel in Austin. So any budgeting you had to do had to go through the city council. So my boyfriend came home and I said, "Well, how'd it go?" And he went, "I'm telling you, the weirdest guy showed up at the city council meeting tonight." And I said, "What do you mean?" He said he had curly black hair and he was wearing purple overalls. And he said his name was Yakov somebody. And he said he went into a rant because dancers' salaries were not in the budgets. And he was furious about it, and said dancers need to get paid. Because what would happen is you turn in an item for them to look at, everybody got paid but the dancers. So Yakov stayed up there and yelled at them for so long to make his case. And after that, everybody that wrote a grant, they had to have a line item for dancers. So it was after that that dancers started getting paid. So thank you for that.
I guess I have a couple little things, but whenever I think of this piece, I always think of Roxanne, because when we were landing in Paris, they were doing a passport check as you get into Orly, and they said, Roxanne was in front of us, and they said, do you have a business card? And she says, "No, but I can do this." And she held her leg up. And I said, you could go on through.
You must be a dancer.
And you got in.
But, it was an interesting time in the 80s, early 90s in the arts in general, and Sharir got so much support from the NEA. It's a very different environment today for regional companies. But we had the opportunity to work with such extraordinary people, Merce and Bill T and all these people. It was amazing, and Crazy Senta Driver and all these other people. It was so interesting. And there was a weird time, and it was also a strange time in the company that we had 5 men over 6'2", and Jose. Wow. So, we were 5 men over 6'2", and Jose, it was, there was a men's section in De La Nuit Le Jour that was so interesting because we were all so big. You just don't see that in companies anymore, ever. But, for me, my career continued in the arts, and I live in the arts, and I think I developed a can-do attitude and my commitment to partnerships from Yakov. I mean, it was, all things were possible. You just had to figure out, it was a puzzle. You just had to figure out the jigsaw puzzle. And I would encourage all dancers, pay attention when you're touring, because, I learned logistics and all the workings of doing a tour from being in a company and helping do it. I paid attention. Because at some point, you will move on, and you got to figure out what you're going to do. So anyway, for me, with Yakov, I think I got a commitment to collaboration and a can-do spirit from Yakov.
I have so many memories. I'm just going to focus on a couple that involve a lot of the people that are in the room right now are current students who are the future of dance, because my earliest memory of Yakov started when I was a student. I was 20, I was a junior in the sociology department here at the University of Texas at Austin, and I had to take a fine arts credit, and I saw modern dance with Yakov Sharir as an option. And it's the very early 80s, and I thought, oh, yeah, they'll teach me. I was a bunhead. I knew nothing. I'd never heard of Merce Cunningham. I'd never heard of Martha Graham. I didn't know anything. But I was athletic, and I was interested, and I hadn't danced in a long time, but I thought, oh, yeah. And I went in, and the very first day, he did this breathing exercise, and I'm going to ask you all to just maybe try a little bit. Inhale up. Exhale, drain. And I was in love. I think it was the first good deep breath I had taken in 10 years, and it changed my life, and he changed my life, and it all started that day. And so this last year, we've had a difficult time, and he reminded me of a few other things that he said at different cycles through this lifelong friendship that we have. He always says, "This too shall pass." And I nod and say, yes, this too shall pass. And then if that doesn't work, he says, "You will prevail." And I've heard it enough that I finally now believe it. And it allowed me this last year to come up with one of my own that I shared with some of our students. Inhale, love. Exhale, compassion. And I think I got that from Yakov.
Wonderful. I hope as we move forward, we get some more stories about purple overalls and other such things, leg extensions instead of passports and whatnot. So we wanted to ask a question about collaboration, which I'm really glad you brought up. But first, we wanted to show you another video clip. And Katie, did you want to introduce it?
Yes. We are now going to, just a second, let me get to it and then I'll talk. Just a moment.
Can I just say one more thing, Rebecca?
Please, yes.
I just wanted, we are such a big family, the Sharir Dance Company and Sharir Bustamante Dance Company, as you can tell from everyone greeting, but we are such a big family, and there are so many people in this audience, not only who danced with us, but who were our board members for decades. Margaret Perry, who was our board president for 10 years, and Chris and Patty, and just, and we've all remained close, and we've all remained friends, and I think a lot of that has to do with the axis of Yakov.
Yeah. Can we actually, I'd be curious, just before we see the clip, would you raise your hand if you danced in a Yakov Sharir piece before? Can you raise your hand if you're a former company member? Board member?
Oh,
administrator with a company? Dance writer about the work? Anybody?
Yeah.
Collaborators? Students? All right. Fantastic. We're looking forward to your stories at the end of this discussion.
How about audience members of any of Yakov's work? There we go. Next, we're going to watch a clip from a piece called Triptych. Triptych was choreographed by Jose Luis Bustamante.
Oh, great.
And here it will be performed by Haywood Woody McGriff.
Oh.
Rebecca, could you push your head down a little bit because I can't see?
Right there. You're right on it.
Thank you.
I remember this piece. This is a piece I
I thought, I know everyone's getting their tissues out. Instead of really moving clip. Yakov has worked with many collaborators. I thought it would be nice to reflect upon working with Jose or with Woody or with any of the other many collaborators that Yakov brought into the company to set work on the company. Already, Kate, you brought up experiences that might have been positive and ones that might have been more challenging. So if everybody would feel free to express a memory of working with a collaborator, that would be great. Do you want to start, Andrea, this time? You feel like you can?
Sure.
All right.
With Jose Luis Bustamante, you never knew what was going to happen. And the very first piece that I ever got to work with Jose was something we actually did on the weekend outside of, at that time, Sharir Dance Company time, called Rocks. And it was my first experience of working with someone who was taking something from nature and trying to bring it into the human body and into movement. And it absolutely blew my mind. And my ability to conceive that movement wouldn't just be searching for a new vocabulary in the way that Yakov had been really kind of, he always used to say, if it feels natural, it's not new. And, and I would say, well, then this must be new. With Jose, it was, for me, the movement seemed more natural, maybe because he and I both have the longest torsos in the world and the ability to move the long torsos in the strangest ways. And tumbling rocks somehow came from that. Anyway, working with Woody profoundly changed my life and was the partnership of a lifetime. Working with all the different collaborators that we had in terms of sculpture and costume and media made me realize that it's not just what I'm reading and what I'm seeing in my head. It's always interesting to open it up to a conversation and hear or see what does another creative being have to add to this. So it definitely was foundational for me. I love working collaboratively because of all of those people and the work with the company.
I think, Yakov, this is one of the great things that Yakov always encouraged was the idea of collaboration and encouraging someone like Jose to create work. Jose was very organic in his process, in my mind. And when this piece was so extraordinary with Woody and very personal to Woody. In fact, I think the only other person that's ever performed that I'm aware of is Jose, right? Jose. I just remember the first time we all saw it, and you just couldn't help but cry because it was so powerful. Woody was a great soul. Hard for me to talk about Woody. Now that makes me laugh. Woody was a great soul. We were lucky to have him here, and he was so terrific in the company. Yeah, can talk about him.
I remember Woody was in Du La Nuit with us, and he was in the studio practicing on his own. And I said, wow, you're really devoted coming in and practicing on your own. And he said, hey, I'm tall and I'm black. If I mess up, everybody's going to know it. and he said, you're just average height and you're a white girl. He said nobody's going to be looking at you. So that was great advice. I think our first the first person, Yakov, that you hired to set a piece on us was David Gordon. Is that right? Postmodern choreographer, and he was here for 3 weeks, which was so special, and we worked with him every day. And Yakov had set a piece on us that had been in the Deaf Dance Company called Circles. And we had to wear nude-colored unitards. And we weren't happy about it. And they were shiny. And so David Gordon gave Yakov so much shit about that and said, man, they look like diseased sausages in those things. And he said, nobody over 14 should be wearing those. And I don't think we ever wore another unitard after that. So I was really thankful for that collaboration. I thought that was great.
Well, I was fortunate to collaborate with at least 4 works with Jose. We were given a New Forms Regional Initiative Grant Award, so NEA. And we began working in an abandoned swimming pool. And it was the first time that I thought it was a really big deal how high we were going. We slung a rope across the pool, and we hung nets, and Andrea was in this piece, and we used rocks. And so the deep end was a performing area, and the audience sat in chairs. And something that, in my collaborations with Jose, it was very internal. We would have endless conversations, philosophical and spiritual, about the meaning of movement and what it was conveying and why we were doing it, if we were doing it, was it really saying it, and all of those dialogues that we have internally as performers and as choreographers. He is a deep, deep human being. I think a lot of his work was searching for himself. Yakov's from another culture. Jose was, and we talked about that, about being in America as artists, what that meant, coming from different cultural backgrounds, actually, in that sense. But in the end, art finds a commonality and the connection. And I think his sadness or his poignancy as a choreographer was profound. And that piece, you can see it, and in many of his works. And often, they weren't always about movement. They were about stillness in the movement of a moment. And he filled out a moment as a choreographer that was unbelievable to me. I would just be, what's going to happen next? And because he was searching for himself, and I think he still is. He's in the Yucatan searching. And with Woody, one of my deepest connections with Woody was I was leaving to go to India to meditate and find myself. And Woody was in Christopher House. And I went to see him. And I just sat with him, and we had the most profound conversation about our childhoods. His childhood was different, and mine was. We only knew each other barely. I'd seen him perform. But on a personal level, we didn't. And at that moment, he shared things with me and I shared things with him. That was unbelievable. I've never forgotten. And I think that when he walked on stage, you could have just watched him stand there for 30 minutes. That's how powerful an artist and a performer and a profoundly moving human being Woody was.
Well, I would say ditto on all that. I really feel like Jose and Yakov were kind of the perfect team creating and presenting. Yakov's work was always so much more abstract, and Jose's work was so much more emotional. And when they put an evening of dance together, it was really a profound and very well-balanced evening of dance. And, there's no one I like to watch perform more than Woody. And that's why when I just saw him on the screen, I couldn't keep it together. But he was a brilliant performer and a brilliant man. And he was my roommate in Houston one time, and he loved to get up on Saturday mornings to watch cartoons. he loved movies. He loved movies.
I was at the very tail end of Woody. I had a few classes with him as a student, and I just want to also point out that Yakov was my very first modern teacher. I also came from ballet, and but I think this idea of collaboration is really big and it's really important. And I think because the bottom line is collaboration is really difficult. It's really difficult because you have egos, you have ideas, you have ownership, you have people who want to be in charge, you have people that want to follow. So to be able to navigate those spaces with integrity and respect, I think, it's almost impossible. And that's something that I do feel that Yakov always created space for everybody. There was, I mean, yes, definitely somebody's in charge because somebody has to make final decisions, but it never felt that you were being told what to do in those moments. It really, you know, and I, as I'm sitting here, I'm just struck by all these things that I learned, that Yakov said, and that I am now understanding. I mean, I really like lessons that you have to grow into, lessons that you don't really understand until you go through the hard things, and lessons that, I mean, it's just, it's kind of shocking, you know, like, again, this idea of ownership, you know, and how can be in relationship to the art and be in relationship to people in a way that is supportive, that creates generosity for everybody. And it's very, very rare, and it's incredibly difficult. And I feel, I mean, this is the work that I do now as well. I love to collaborate. I love to be in a room. I love to be in a room with a lot of different people that are coming at one idea in many different ways, because it's just bigger and it's more real, and there's, I guess in the end, there's always space for everyone. And that is something that I'm so grateful for, that there's always space for everybody in the room. And I mean, with Ruth Margraf, I even remember the poet came in and we did work with Ruth, and Christopher Middleton, and all these collaborations with Yakov as well. I mean, with Jose, I worked a lot with Jose in the later years, and you know, I think about this idea of impact and how impact, it's kind of hard to measure impact. But when I see how I have been informed so deeply in conscious and unconscious ways by the work and the space and the generosity, that is the definition of impact. I moved forward in a way that was generously facilitated for me as a young person. So yeah, collaboration is hard, and Yakov's really good at it, and he's always been very good at it and generous. Yeah.
I do remember Jose saying one day, because Yakov would work, he'd come in and teach all day, and then he'd teach class to us, and then we would have rehearsal. And once we started the school, I remember on Mondays, at the end of rehearsal, you would go over to our school on Monday nights and teach a modern class till 9:30. And remember Jose saying, "You know, Kate, I took a nap today, but I feel so guilty about it because Yakov never takes a nap. So don't tell him."
Jose was a napper.
Jose was a napper.
Jose's a
That's
napper.
right.
He likes a siesta.
He did.
He did. Yeah.
Kept that up.
So we want to make sure we talk a little bit about technology in relation to Yakov's work and some of our experiences with technology in the work. So Katie's going to show a clip of a piece and introduce the piece to you, and then we'll talk about technology.
We're going to watch a clip of 3D Embodied. This is a much more recent piece of choreography by Yakov. It's from 2013, and here it will be performed by student performers in UT's Dance Repertory Theater. I'm going to read from the program note. In 3D Embodied, we imagine the future through the exploration of Dr. Yakov Sharir's collaborative team. He brings us into a world where the boundaries between analog and digital realities become invisible, and both experiences impact our corporal existence with equally profound consequences.
The work is so multi-layered, just the way, just as a viewer of the work, how it's 2D and 3D and 4D, and also that as Yakov moves along, it seems he gets more complicated, like the technology just expands, which is sort of the opposite of most of us. We get more technologically challenged as we age. So I wanted to ask you how Yakov's work with technology has influenced you as a dancer or as a viewer, and that may be a reflection about working with some of the, I mean, you were talking about bungees and implements maybe strapped to your body, and how is that to experience as a dancer, navigating that relationship with technology, or as a viewer, how the work has impacted you?
I think that one of the amazing things is that first of all, I feel like Jose and Yakov both deal with technology, but in different ways. And there was such a push to just find out what's possible all the time. Find out what's possible. I have this idea, I'm going to try this thing. And it has this, hey, Sandy, it has this way of creating density in the space that the goal was always to integrate the technology. The goal was always to not just have, here's this thing that I'm going to have over here, and then dance will kind of exist. There was always this trying to understand how to create something that is that complements rather than overtakes or. And I think for me, it actually comes back very much down to this idea of design. That technology becomes a way to add another design element into a piece that can inform what it is that you're seeing, that comes and undergirds or informs in a different way or provides just multiple ways of seeing things and multiple ways of connecting. And in my own work, I do a lot of work with technology. I do work with video projection design. I very much am informed by the work that we did in the Schreer Company. And what's been so great is that it changes how you see things. And then by changing how you see things, then it changes how you do things. And then there's always this kind of ever-growing, building, shifting, changing world of possibility that happens, because if we add another element in, then we see it in a different way. I mean, like if we think about the body, for me, something so simple that I learned from all of this was 4 basic principles of body moving, light moving, body still, light still, body still, light moving, light still, body moving. There are so many things that happen when we have technology and a body. Then the fact that a body can create motion in a static image, I think is fascinating. So being able to be inside of those situations and learning about all these different ways, and just having like this idea of three-dimensionality, it's super fascinating to me. And there was always just an experimentation of trying. I remember Jose had done a piece called The Laboratory, which was, he had gotten a graphing calculator, and he made animations, 4D animations from a graphing calculator, and then he was like, okay, do something with this. And we're like, oh, I don't know. But it's because it's always about relationship. It never lost integrity in terms of the relationship between the technology. It was never technology just for technology's sake. And I think that that's actually also quite rare. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. I can't say anything better than that. Well, Yakov was really on the cutting edge of dance and technology. I mean, Yakov and Merce Cunningham were working on dance and technology, before anyone else, it seems like. And, and we always think that as we age, we get less technological. But it just seems like Yakov just kept pushing and pushing and pushing the limits, through what he was exploring and his PhD, and just to keep going at an age beyond which most of us can comprehend it was really important. And I think it opened a lot of doors internationally for the company and for Yakov.
Yeah, I struggled with technology and the body. I mean, in the beginning of it, when Yakov was first doing it, when I see it now, it's so cosmic, it's so infinite, and that you can play around with what becomes looking like a building, which we jump off of, becomes in this space in the body that you can move it to. It's really infinite, the spatial dynamic of the body in the technology. I mean, it becomes sort of one. It's interesting to come back to it, and having been in the audience and struggled with it, and to come back and see kind of its brilliance, actually. Yeah.
We have to learn how to watch it.
Yeah,
we have to learn how to watch it.
Maybe
that's
it.
And I think
that's true.
That in the doing of it, we were also learning how to see it.
Right. Right. It's amazing.
Oh,
sorry.
I know it's fine. I had left the company by the time Yakov was starting this, and to be quite candid, I couldn't stand it when I would watch it. But I think you're right. Now, as I look at it today, it's very, very different for me. And I think Andy touched on something too, is the unbelievable curiosity that Yakov still has, and Jose has too. That was such a gift that I think both of them taught all of us as artists. And so the curiosity in movement, I wonder what would happen if, instead of, and that I think was, like I said, a great gift that Yakov and Jose passed to all of us that were in the company.
You know, for me, it was never, this is my opinion. It was never really about Yakov's commitment to technology. It was his commitment to innovation. Yeah. And technology became the medium for his absolute commitment to innovation. And so often, I think we think of innovative works only coming from the young, and it's so often not the case. Because with age comes experience and a body knowledge that comes from having just been an artist for so long. So I look at Yakov's work. You know, in my career, all I do is look at work. I mean, I'm leaving Monday to look at 30 companies in Israel. And technology is such an integral part today of so much work, of so many artists around the globe, and Yakov was right in the forefront of it. You know, in the beginning, I kept questioning what he was doing with it, and you look at it now and you totally get it. And it is, for me, just a person who is all about innovation and risk, you know.
I have a slightly different perspective than most people, except perhaps Carolyn Pavlik could have, because I think that she and I shared a common feeling of, you want me to dance like that cyberhuman doll? I'm not a doll, I'm a woman. And Yakov would say, no, this is a computer program. You are a human, I want you to breathe life into it. And I'm like, okay, so are we... Is this a Peto's workshop here? You know, I had a lot of, and the thing about Yakov is I could say these things, and my, you know, angry young red-haired feminist would always be right there saying, what are we doing here? You know, because I trusted him and I knew it was coming from a place of let's make poetry. And so our experiments, which did travel the world, that's kind of the other thing, is I also reaped the benefit of those early experiences. I went all over the world with technology that we were just, at that time, not feeling immersed inside of it in this way. We were feeling like we are live human people on stage and people are looking past me at a screen, because if there's a screen, you're going to watch it. And that felt frustrating. But I will say, when I say I have a unique perspective, I've watched not just this work, but the one that came after that, Ad Mortuus, and I've seen the way the technology is now touching our students, the youth of today, as the performers, as the young feminists who are dancing inside of it. And it's empowering, and it's empowering for them. So I also found myself, I'm kind of an analog gal in a digital world, as most of you know. There was a moment where my favorite collaborator, John Christensen, began to be interested in visual animation, and he and Yakov and I worked on a piece called All Around Me, and then that led to me working on a piece, a fish, a noun, and a verb with animation. Who would have thought? So it pushed me past my own smallness, I will say, into seeing the infiniteness of it. And again, thank you, Yakov.
I'm sorry, can I say one more thing? It's so there was always process involved. It was never, there was always a pathway. And there's this, I feel like I have such an understanding of my relationship to technology and the work because I watched Jose and Yakov have very, very specific processes around what things happen. And so when I look at work today sometimes too, and I'll just say something like, well, did you think about putting the projector over there? You know, like, did you think about maybe like what happens to the light when it bends around a body versus on a flat surface? Like, these are things that every single thing was coming from a place of like, we're going to throw these together, we're going to look at it, we're going to see what happens. So it builds a process. Yeah.
Katie, are you showing one more? Or are you going to close it out?
Well, Andrea, I think, mentioned Add More to Us, which is the first dance on our looping video, which will be what's up there from now through the reception. So I thought I'd just start playing it because it linked in.
Did we want to ask them to have final reflections before we open up to questions, or do you want to open up to questions and comments from the audience?
Comments.
Questions.
Are we feeling it? Comments and questions?
Yeah, comments are fine. Yeah. So many
Great.
people out there had experiences too.
Do it. Let's do it.
I will tell one funny story. I always think about this when I think of Yakov and our hilarious touring. What was the city that Larry Don's from?
Big Spring.
Big Spring. Oh,
Big Spring.
my gosh.
So we were.
Remember
we
that
were,
guy? Fruit salad. Yeah.
Yeah. That we were on our way to, I don't know, somewhere in West Texas, and we stopped in Big Spring, and Yakov is there. You know how Yakov is, and he's sitting there with his little perfect posture and with his accent, and he asked this woman in Big Spring, I'd like a fruit plate. And she goes, he goes, well, what's on it? She said, fruit.
No, she said it like this. Fruit.
Fruit. And then it came, and it was out of a jar. You know, one of those things. It's in a fruit cocktail. Yakov was, appalled at the Del Monte fruit cocktail. I always remember it.
So we want to open the discussion now to all of you. If you have a memory you'd like to share or a question to ask our panelists, but there are a lot of people who also have many relationships to this work in Yakov, so feel free. Beth has
And let me bring you the mic so we can get it on record.
The first question is always the longest and hardest.
I'm Chris Adams, and I was on the board for a long time. And Yakov is very persuasive. He has a manner about him that makes you do things you think you would never do. And so, Carol was the managing director, and I didn't know Yakov very well, and he came over to the house one day, and we were in the kitchen, and an hour later, I was on the board. And I thought, how did this happen? I didn't know what I was doing, and 12 years later, I was still on the board. So anyway, be careful if you get in a room with Yakov and he wants you to do something, because you'll end up doing it, okay?
I danced with Yakov many decades ago, and I have some of the same memories that people up here shared. But I wanted to say one of the things that I think that has stuck with me the longest about my experience with Yakov was something that I remember him saying, and maybe I'm the only person that remembers this, but Kate was talking about how we would go into Capital City Playhouse, and he would have been in there and cleaning it up. I remember one time we went someplace in the Metroplex and we performed outdoors on this scaffolding and a tornado came through or something. And so that wasn't so good. And then other times we performed in very beautiful theater spaces, very advanced technologically and, you know, all the bells and whistles. But it seems like no matter where we were, I can remember him always saying to us backstage, conduct yourself with grace and dignity. Conduct yourself with grace and dignity. And I've always remembered that, especially it seems like over the last year. I've been having to remind myself that a lot, but I want to thank Yakov for teaching me, conduct yourself with grace and dignity. Thank you.
Yakov got pulled over once, and the police officer asked for his ID, and so Yakov is pulling out his bag, and then there's a purse inside the bag, and there's another purse inside that bag. And the policeman said, "You have so many purses," and Yakov goes, "Well, that's because I'm a girl."
He was the first lesbian I ever met. He was.
I was a student of Yakov's, and one of the things I remember was the concept of reversing and retrograding. And I just my brain just couldn't get around it, but he explained it in a way that made it really clear that those were two very different concepts. And oftentimes I remember he would walk into class and he'd call us to attention, and he would never speak a word, but he would rhythm out his dance, ti ti tum ta ta ti 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 tum ti 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 tum, and that was it made you really pay attention to what he was trying to get out of you, and I always try to bring that attention to my performance now. So I thank Yakov for that.
Oh, that just reminds me too. In class, he would start and he would say, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. And I was like, when is it going to end? It's like a 20-count phrase. 20-count phrase followed by a 15-count phrase.
And I will say that Lori Wilson, who was here with us for a while and started her own company, Tallulah Dance Company in Seattle, she would do that, but it would go 1 through 16, 1 through 32, 1 through 64. When they were like, how do I know when to start counting over on the 1?
When I was chair of the department eons ago, Yakov has always been a very close friend. He was also the biggest pain in the ass in the entire department, in that he was completely subversive. The job of a university administrator is to keep the status quo, to try to follow the rules, and keep everybody else following the rules. And I remember the day he came into my office and he asked if we could have a little space downstairs for some computer stuff that he wanted to do. I said, sure, you know, just find someplace. And about 2 months later, I came downstairs, and they're like, how many computers did you have down there, Yakov? Like 4 or 5 computers. I had no idea where they came from. All these guys from engineering are there. I'd never seen them before. The whole place looked like Hooverville. And I just made a fundamental decision. I'm not going to win this one. I turned around, I walked back upstairs, sat in my office, and pretended that I had never seen it at all.
Anyone else? Anyone else?
As you're walking over there, I'm just going to say one more thing. When Woody died, we did a fundraising initiative to do a presidential endowment in his name that, you know, that some of these students have gotten the benefit of. And we said that everything we raised past the first 100,000 would go, we're trying to figure out what to do with it. And it was really Yakov's suggestion that we needed to do something for DRT. So that's how the endowment came to place, that restricted the second endowment that could only be used for DRT, for costumes or travel, not for faculty engagement or anything else, but only for DRT. And that fund has grown and grown and grown, and we're so grateful that we did it. So.
Hi. Talk louder. Hello? There we go. So my name is Isaac Isker. I am currently
a sophomore in the BFA dance program, and I am also in Yakov's choreography class. And the very first time Yakov said anything to me ever, I had just finished DAPS for the spring semester this year actually, and I walk over to him and he says, "Isaac, you would dance so much more powerfully if you moved with more courage." And everything just made more sense after that, and I've been a different dancer ever since then. And he continues to put out this knowledge in such a simple and clean way that's not confused by excessive words that makes one think, oh my gosh, it makes so much sense. It's so clear to me now. And that's something I strive to do in my own teaching as well. So thank you for that.
I'd like to say something a little bit as a dance historian and a colleague of Yakov who's benefited so much from his support and mentorship since I've been here. I arrived on the tenure track having to produce a book, and so that meant I was in the building pretty much all the time. I spent Christmas break, spring break, all summer in the building, and the only other person, of course, during those times who'd be in the building would be Yakov, because he never goes home. The other thing is my office was near the elevator and also by the bathroom, so Yakov would walk by my office at least 10 times a day while I was writing, which was really useful to me because I was writing a book on Jewish identity and American dance, and I would be going through archival materials, and I would say, this choreographer, Pauline Kohner, in the 1930s, did a dance called Debka, and it's described as this. And then Yakov would walk by, and I'd say, Yakov, and I'd read the description. Does this sound like a Debka? He'd say, no, that is not Debka. This is Debka. And then he would do the Debka in my office. And then I'd be reading on, and I'd say, Yakov, this is a picture of that same dancer in something called Yemenite prayer, and here's a description of the dance. Does that sound like Yemenite dancing? No. This is what Yemenite dancing is. Or I'd be writing about choreographers like Sophie Maslow and Anna Sokolow, and when Yakov was younger, he was a dancer with Batsheva Dance Company in Israel, where he had the experience of working with all these choreographers and dancers in person. And the amount of information I got, nobody liked Sophie Maslow's dance, Anna Sokolow was a great choreographer, but she was a real bitch, like all of this. It was like every artist I was writing about, he had a personal...
It's the best dance history ever.
It was, and it would walk by Yakov and his dance history would just walk by my door every, hour or so upon cue, and then there would be the passage of Hebrew, the music, and I would know, what do you think the tune is to this song? And he would, sing it. So it was just a tremendous gift, I think, as a dance historian, the sort of amount of history that he holds in his experience and his body and that he shares with all of us.
I had another story to tell about rocks, the making of rocks, and Jose spelled it R-O-K-S. And at the question and answer after he premiered it, it was at Doherty Art Center, somebody said, they just thought that was really pretty interesting. Why did you spell rocks this way? And Jose said, isn't that how you spell it? But then I remember that, remember he came into your rehearsal. I think he came into your rehearsal with little pebbles in his hand. Because he had a really interesting partnering. And he would say, this is what we're going to do, and he'd shake the pebbles, and they would bounce off of each other. So that's kind of how he got that, the idea for rocks. And I remember asking Gay, and I might have asked Andrea too, because I wasn't in the piece, and I was sitting next to Yakov when these guys premiered it. And I asked Gay and Andrea, did you have any idea that this was incredible, what you were going to do? And I can still remember it. Sitting next to Yakov and these guys were performing it, the audience got on the edge of their seat. We had never seen any movement like this ever. And at the end of the piece, the whole audience, it was packed, jumped up and just started clapping because it was an amazing kind of new way of moving and new ideas. It was really, really eclectic. and electric in the audience. And I think you guys are so lucky to have been able to do that and be on the ground floor of, because Jose didn't really know what he was doing, you know? But these guys were so eager to, and I think he and Yakov both had that, and you've touched on this too, Andy, that you're so willing to go along, you know, because the reward is so great. And then the other thing I want to talk about, when Gay talked about the dignity and everything, Yakov presented Trisha Brown's company. And he went to pick him up at the airport, and I asked him, I said, well, how was it? And he went, Kate, they have the worst posture. And he said, they're so schleppy. And he said, they've got duct tape around their suitcases. And he said, what's that about? And he said, when I danced in Israel, we would walk through the airport and people would move away from us because we were so proud to be artists and we were looked up to. And he said, I don't understand this schleppy stuff. I thought that was pretty good. So.
Well, Yakov asked me one time to drop him off for a haircut, and so I'm driving, and I said, where are we going? He says, to Supercuts. And I said, then you can get off at the corner. I'm not going to Supercuts. So I made him get off at the corner.
Okay, I have one more story.
One.
So is Vivian here? Vivian Addison, she'll be here later. We had 2 dancers in the company, this is very early on, that didn't shave their legs or shave under their arms. So we were going to Houston to perform.
You're talking about women.
Women. We were going to Houston to perform, and some people there were giving us a really nice party. And so Yakov sat us all down and told us how to dress. And he said to these women, we said to all of us, you have to wear pantyhose. And so the 2 women that didn't shave their legs were like, well, we don't shave our legs. And he said, well, you still have to wear pantyhose. So they were in the back, like doing this to their legs, with the hair down. And then he said, you have to shave under your arms. You have to. And they were like, no. So they finally agreed that they would clip their underarm hair. And that was kind of that's how they fixed that. So how we dressed and behaved, like you said, was very important.
It was one of the great pleasures of my life to invite people to these performances as my guest, because I knew that it would be giving them a gift, that it would open a whole new world of ideas, of creativity and invention. And Yakov, I want to thank you from my heart for those profoundly beautiful, memorable moments. Thank you.
Rebecca. Katie. Katie. We have a message here from Sandra Lomax, who is the Assistant Dean for Development of the College of Fine Arts and has been a dance critic and was going to be on the panel, but unfortunately fell ill, so she sent a letter to Yakov, and I'm going to read it now. Dear Yakov, congratulations on today's launch of the Sharir and Sharir Bustamante Dance Collection. What a fitting tribute to your legacy as a choreographer and a pioneer of blending new technologies with live dance performance. When thinking about the company's impact over the years, and my good fortune to write about the company for Dance Magazine and the Austin American Statesman for 18 of those years, there are so many milestones that come to mind. The international tours to Europe, Asia, and the Middle East, the collaborations with companies as diverse as Bello Lewitsky's, the Hartford Ballet, and Deborah Hay, the recognition from major funding organizations like the National Endowment for the Arts, the Doris Duke Foundation, the Mid-America Arts Alliance, and one of the most audacious moves that put you in the national spotlight. Not one, but 3 co-commissioned works with the Merce Cunningham Dance Company that premiered in Austin. This made the dance world wake up and say, who is Yakov Sharir? And what is so special about his dance company in Austin? The Merce Cunningham commissions were just one example that the Sharir Dance Company was not an isolated regional troupe, but one that had impact nationally and internationally as the leading professional modern dance company in Texas. But most importantly, You embraced success with humility and generosity. You always shared your stage with local dance troupes. You always had the attitude that we're all in this together. Not only did you collaborate with other dancers and dance companies, but visual artists, composers, musicians, and eventually with computer scientists and engineers. And at the heart of your innovations and artistic explorations were the dancers. In 1996, I quoted you in an article saying, "New technology is a choreographic tool, not a replacement for the human body in motion. Never will be." And it never was. You mentored generations of dancers and choreographers and artists, and you did this by creating a vast repertoire that was fearless, inventive, and constantly exploring new ways of moving human bodies through time and space, and even cyberspace. Thank you, Yaakov, for leaving this wonderful legacy. And thank you to the UT Fine Arts Library for creating this archive that will benefit future generations of dancers and artists. From Sandra Lomax.
So I'm going to invite Andrea Beckham up to lead us in a collective movement endeavor.
All right. Just a couple of things before we do this together, because this is definitely a collaboration. I'm seeing a lot of dancers. Everybody's a dancer. Yaakov's legacy to me is the same as it is to every person he meets. It's empowerment. There's nothing he can't do. So you could do this in your chair. You can do this on the wall. You can turn this into a Dr. Seuss poem. But I'd like to invite a couple of the current dancers to stand up and do it, and anybody else who'd like to stand up and do it. You're watching a piece right now called The Egg, which I feel like is the classic phrase and manipulate education that I got. I didn't know how to make work, but this piece, Yaakov made a phrase, and then he assigned couples. And I think I was the scrambled egg couple with Jose Luis and the fried egg couple with Haywood Woody McGriff. Carolyn Pavlik and Chris Boyd are carrying the phrase into a partnering duet right now. So it was an amazing piece that also traveled to Tel Aviv, Israel, and won a spot in the international choreographic competition there, a testament to Yaakov's choreography. But it started with a simple phrase, and then the dancers were empowered to manipulate the phrase and to manipulate the choreography into duets, and then the group sections went that way. So I'm going to not use one of Yaakov's gestural phrase, and all of Yaakov's students right now that are in here that have had him are currently going, yes, I recognize that, whether it be sign language or gestural material, and then manipulate. I would like to just do a small little phrase. Please share it with me if you'd like to.
I'll let the young generation do it.
Let them do it.
The thing that's manipulated in a way that there's really no right or wrong. There's only the dance and where the dance goes. And I do feel like the entire history of the Sharir company and Sharir is about empowerment and it's about innovation, and that is their legacy to us.
That's right. Keep it going.
Thank you, Andrea, and thank you all our panelists.